From white bullying and falsely accusing Cyborg of being intimidated by a rematch, to Nijam calling him out for getting away with slapping his wife, these are UFC fighters who cannot stand Dana White. While it's surprising to see anyone get on their boss's bad side, you should know that Dana isn't exactly an award-winning boss, and he proved that when Chris Cyborg called him out for bullying her. Now, if you hadn't heard, Cyborg was on top of the UFC back in 2018, with a 5-win streak and holding the featherweight championship until she lost to Amanda by KO in 50 seconds. But what's even worse than her humiliating loss is that Dana accused her of being scared of a rematch with Amanda. But get this, that's not what really went down, because the ex-champ busted out and straight up called Dana a liar, making it crystal clear that she'd never say no to settling the score with Amanda. But that wasn't possible when her boss was bullying her all over the internet and she claimed that it was hurting her brand. She even boldly said that there was no need for love between them, and all she wanted from his end was respect. But you know Dana can't just let it go, and Chris calling him a liar pissed him off so much that he stooped real low, dissing her looks and saying she looked like Vanderlei Silva in a dress and heels. And if that wasn't bad enough, he even mocked her in a room full of reporters. So it makes sense that Chris demanded an apology from the boss, but Dana, as stubborn as ever, didn't give her squat. Instead, he let her walk away without even renewing her contract. And while losing an amazing fighter like Chris was a huge blow for the UFC, you'd think he'd learn to not go around throwing lies and accusations. But he did the same thing again, when he accused Francis Ngannou of being afraid to fight Jon Jones. It's no secret that the Predator is one of, if not the best heavyweights in the world, and it did not sit well with the boss man when he turned down a mega contract that would have made him the highest paid heavyweight in UFC history. So Dana wasted no time in trashing Francis as soon as he became a free agent, saying that the only reason he left is because he wanted to take zero risks. He even went as far as to say that Francis thinks he can fight lesser opponents for more money in other promotions, because apparently he wanted to set up a fight between Francis and Jon Jones. But he claims that the Predator got scared after seeing how Jones submitted a beast like Cyril Gane in 2 minutes. But the Cameroonian came forward, debunking every one of Dana's false accusations. He said that if he wanted to take zero risks, he wouldn't have defended his title against Gane while having a grade 3 MCL tear. You heard that right? The Predator beat Cyril even though his knee was severely injured. And as for the accusation that he was scared, that's just outrageous, because Francis had been pushing for a matchup way back in 2021. But back then, Dana claimed that Jones was the one who was scared, while in fact, the only reason Jones said no was 'cause he wanted $30 million for the fight. So, I guess the boss man has a knack for twisting words, and Francis thinks that Dana keeps making these false accusations because he just can't see him being happy and respected with the PFL. But the boss man's list of offenses doesn't end at this, because he has an even bigger knack for undervaluing his fighters. And Aljamain Sterling is sick of Dana not giving him the credit he deserves. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I think the bantamweight champ is really being looked over in the UFC, especially because he won his title defense against Henry Cejudo, probably the greatest combat athlete of all time. And yet the UFC scheduled him for another fight just 3 months later. Plus, the man's been fighting with a torn bicep for more than a year and has had 3 successful title defenses despite being injured. So the Funkmaster could definitely use some time away from the octagon, and when Dana announced his next fight coming up so soon, Sterling simply said that he'll take the fight if his body holds up. And while fans sympathized with the champ, Dana went all out on him, saying that Aljo can't get out of his own way. So the boss pretty much accused him of self-sabotage, and even said that if he can't fight, they'll just set an interim title match and have someone else fight in his place. But Aljo decided that this was enough, and he wasn't going to be taken for granted anymore. So, in an interview, he reminded everyone of his record 3 consecutive title defenses, and claimed that he'd never rejected the fight. He'd made a deal and was going to show up because that's what champions do. And that's not all. Aljo is pissed at the fact that Dana plays favorites, because if Conor McGregor does something, it's awesome. But someone like him who's been through wars can't get a single word of appreciation from Uncle Dana or the UFC. And again, Dana has completely denied the notion that he undervalues Aljo and has called it ridiculous. But the boss man's just making up excuses because he has a history of doing the same to other fighters as well. Like when Demetrius Johnson accused him of despicable treatment. Yep, he used the exact same words. And he's not wrong either, because DJ was so done with Dana that he left UFC for one championship in 2018. Now, for most folks, that's a major step down, but the legendary Mighty Mouse revealed that Dana's behavior left him no other choice. Now the thing is that Dana was pushing DJ, a flyweight, to defend his title against TJ Dillashaw, who was a bantamweight. And DJ wasn't too thrilled about the idea of fighting someone who was a weight class above him. But he still agreed on one condition, that he gets paid $1 million for the super fight, which wasn't even a big deal, considering how big the fight would have been. But Dana had no regard for the Mighty Mouse, and not only did he reject his pay demands, he called him insane for rejecting a fight like this. He even straight up put him in his place, saying that, unfortunately, DJ doesn't make the fights, Dana does. And this is the fight that they're going to have no matter what. But DJ just had tough luck, because believe it or not, Dana does play favorites. And no, it's not just McGregor, because Leon Edwards is not impressed with Dana's choice of Colby Covington as his next opponent. In the post-fight press conference after Rocky beat Kamaru Usman at UFC 286, the boss revealed that Colby would be the next welterweight contender. And while Colby's record is impressive, being number 2 on the welterweight rankings, and also being a former interim title holder, but Leon thinks that it takes a lot more than just cutting weight and showing up to the weigh-in to deserve a title shot. And he's not wrong either, because he was baffled after arriving at the post-match conference to learn his next opponent's someone who's been out of the game for 1.5 years, without any injury or anything. Leon says that it just doesn't make sense, that he slides in for a world title shot when there are guys who've been actively fighting and did not sit out for 1 year. Plus, Rocky believes that he's the king of welterweights, and he should have at least some say in deciding his opponents. But once again, the fighter's demands have gone on deaf ears, and Dana is hell-bent on giving Colby the title shot. So I guess the boss could do better in treating his fighters, but talking about better treatments, his wife could really use some of it too. Because Ramsey Nijem called Dana out for getting away with hitting his wife, and there's no way you didn't hear about Dana slapping his wife after having too much to drink at a party. But what you don't know is that Dana apologized for his actions in a video later on, and that's all good. But what pissed many people, including Ramsey, was that Dana was trying to downplay the seriousness of what he did by saying that a much worse punishment would be living with his actions forever than being suspended from the UFC for a month or two. But Ramsey was not going to see the boss get away with it so easily. Ramsey gave his own example, saying that when he was suspended for 9 months for using drugs, having to live with the reputation of a drug user would have been a worthy punishment too. But that's just not how it works, especially if it's as bad as physically abusing your partner, then that calls for a suspension, or even worse. So from Nijem calling Dana out for getting away with slapping his wife, to Dana bullying and falsely accusing Cyborg of being intimidated by a rematch, those were UFC fighters who cannot stand the UFC president.